The dust storms of Vera 9 always moved like living things, slow, circling predators of static and orange, grit that scraped the outposts to their metal bones. Engineer Daniel Holt had learned to work through them by instinct. Brace the panel, seal the coupler, listen for the crackle of charged sand hitting his suit. Nothing surprised him anymore on this planet, until tonight. A vibration thrummed through the ground, deep and resonant, nothing like the tremors produced by shifting dunes. Daniel froze, gloved hands still inside an exposed relay box. The vibration came again, stronger, focused, directional, not natural. He lifted his head toward the horizon just as the storm tore open. Not parted, opened, like something carved a path straight through it. The swirling dust sheared aside in a perfect corridor of still air, as if held at bay by an invisible force. And at the far end of that corridor, stepping through the choking orange darkness as if she had command authority over the planet itself, came a figure. Tall, humanoid. Armored in polished obsidian plates etched with faint blue sigils that pulsed in rhythm with the storm's static charge. Her silhouette was sharp, predatory, unmistakably alien. Two elongated ear-like structures curved backward from her head, their edges glowing with pale, luminescent strands like bioluminescent circuitry. Her face, what Daniel could see of it, was unsettlingly beautiful. Not in a human sense, but in a way that triggered every instinct to stand straighter, breathe quieter, and choose one's words carefully. Eyes like iridescent silver assessed the landscape with the precision of a scanning array. Her arrival had weight. Intent, authority. Daniel stepped back from the relay box, unsure whether to reach for his emergency beacon or keep his hands visible. The alien's armor folded back along her spine like shifting architecture, revealing more of her tall, lithe form. She stopped 5 meters away. Her voice carried through the static storm as if she were speaking beside him. "Human engineer," she said, not asking but confirming. Her accent had a harmonics layer that didn't belong to any known translator. "Identify yourself." Daniel swallowed. "Daniel Holt, Terra Systems Maintenance Division, and you are." She tilted her head slightly, the glowing filaments on her ears shifting hues, assessing, analyzing. "I am Commander Aerynth Val-Shara of the Velar Dominion." Daniel blinked. The Dominion, a name that had appeared only in encrypted deep space rumors. No confirmed diplomacy, no confirmed sightings. Supposedly a civilization that stayed far from human borders. "What are you doing here?" Daniel asked, trying not to let the wind shake his voice. Aerynth extended one hand, and a projection flickered to life between them, a complex energy pattern spiraling like a star collapsing backward. "Something has awakened beneath this settlement. We detected an energy signature matching a forbidden precursor device. Your species should not have access to it." Daniel frowned. "We don't have any precursor technology here. This is just a mining outpost." Her eyes narrowed. "Incorrect." The projection sharpened, revealing the site map. His outpost, the ridge, the substructure below. A substructure he'd always assumed was just dense mineral layering. "That energy pulse," Aerynth continued, "reached our long-range arrays 13 hours ago. The Dominion dispatched me immediately to secure it." "You came alone?" Daniel asked before he could stop himself. A faint glimmer, either amusement or warning, crossed her features. "I do not require an escort to deal with an unshielded human outpost." Static flickered across her armor as the storm tried, and failed to touch her. The air around her hummed with a microbarrier field of extreme sophistication. Daniel raised his palms. "Look, Commander, if something dangerous is under this settlement, we need to inform my supervisors. We need scans, protocols." No, the word struck the air like a command that even the storm obeyed. "Your superiors will interfere. Your protocols will slow extraction, and your presence may compromise the device further." Daniel felt irritation flare. "This outpost is under human jurisdiction. You can't walk in and take control." But she had already turned away, scanning the ground with a narrow-beam sensor integrated into her forearm. She moved with predatory precision, every step deliberate. "Human jurisdiction ends where precursor technology begins. Your people do not yet understand the dangers of what sleeps beneath you." Then her silver eyes locked onto him again, sharp, analytical, almost evaluating. "You will guide me," she said. Daniel stared. "Excuse me. You are the only qualified engineer within 8 kilometers. You know your systems. You understand your infrastructure. You will assist." "That wasn't a request." "It was not." Aerynth stepped closer, the storm held back by her presence, and Daniel realized with a sinking feeling that whatever she was here to contain, it was already too late to pretend humans were in control. Because the ground beneath his boots vibrated again, stronger, deeper, like something waking up. Aerynth's ears flared with sudden luminous intensity. "It has begun," she said quietly. "And if we fail to contain it, your entire settlement will collapse." The access tunnel beneath Outpost 6 wasn't meant for elegance. Just cables, junction ports, and enough space for a technician to crawl through without dislocating a shoulder. Daniel had crawled through it countless times. Aerynth, however, moved through it like a creature adapted to enclosed combat. Silent, fluid, unbothered by the cramped angles or the flickering emergency lights. Her armor dimmed itself automatically, optimizing to the low-light conditions. Even the glowing ear filaments drew inward, becoming razor-thin strands of bioluminescent blue. Daniel tried not to stare. "You navigate these passages often," she remarked, scanning the conduit walls as though they insulted her by existing. "Yeah," Daniel muttered. "Maintenance engineers go where no one else wants to go. It's tradition." "An inefficient allocation of personnel," Aerynth said. "Your species should not rely on individuals willing to place themselves in recurring structural danger." "That's called a job." "Primitive," she said simply. He clenched his teeth. "Glad you're impressed." Aerynth paused mid-stride, turning her head toward him slowly, too slowly. Predatory slow. "Do not mistake observation for admiration," she said. "Didn't think I did." "Good." Yet her glowing eyes lingered on him a moment longer than necessary, as if recalibrating her assessment. A deep tremor rolled through the tunnel, shaking dust from the overhead beams. The lights flickered, then steadied. Aerynth focused instantly, her helmet generating a holographic overlay that showed a sinking gravitational node beneath the outpost. "It accelerates," she murmured. "The device is destabilizing the planet's crust faster than I projected." Daniel frowned at her holomap. "That's right under the geothermal plate. If that collapses, the entire facility will follow." Matter of fact, calm, fatalistic. Daniel resisted the urge to swear. "Then we need to get everyone topside now." "No, what do you mean, no? There are 47 people up there." "There were 47, Aerynth corrected. "Evacuation pods have already launched. I triggered the emergency override codes." Daniel turned to her sharply. "You what? Those codes are classified." "I accessed them." "That's illegal." Aerynth did not break stride. "Your species' legal frameworks do not concern me. My directive is containment. Civilian survival is a secondary but acceptable outcome." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "You evacuated everyone except me." "You were below ground already. Extraction would have delayed my descent." "You left me here." "You are useful." Daniel swore under his breath. "Well, thanks, that really clears it up." "You are welcome." He nearly walked into a conduit pipe. They reached a pressure door sealed with multiple locks. Aerynth placed her palm against the panel. Her armor interfaced with the security system instantly, bypassing the protocols faster than any human tech he'd ever seen. The door slid open with a reluctant groan. Beyond it lay a circular chamber he had never seen before. The walls hummed with faint violet light, alien light, not part of human construction. Sigils pulsed softly, arranged in complex spirals that moved like breathing metal. Aerynth inhaled sharply, the first sign of genuine shock he'd witnessed. "It is worse than expected," she whispered. Daniel stepped closer. "What is this?" "Not your doing," she said. "Not human, not Dominion. This is precursor architecture." Daniel felt the hairs rise on his arms. The chamber didn't feel built. It felt grown, like the metal had flowed into place over centuries. In the center of the room hovered a small, spinning construct, no larger than a fist, composed of interlocking fragments rotating in impossible geometries. A low harmonic resonance vibrated through Daniel's skull. Aerynth moved closer, her face tightening. "Do not look directly at the core. Its geometry is incompatible with your neural patterning." Daniel immediately looked away. "Noted." Aerynth circled the core slowly, her luminescent ears flaring wide as she scanned it. "This is a temporal phase stabilizer, incomplete, buried, dormant, until your outpost awakened it." Daniel blinked. "We never touched this. We didn't even know it was here. Then your machinery activated it accidentally." Her voice sharpened. "Or someone wanted it activated." Daniel stiffened, meaning. She stopped walking. "Meaning sabotage, external or internal." He stared at the spinning construct. "What does the stabilizer do?" Aerynth hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, barely perceptible, but Daniel caught it. It folds space-time into a micro-singularity for the purpose of containment, she said. In simple human terms, it creates a prison that cannot be escaped. A prison for what? Aerynth turned toward him, eyes glowing brighter now, expression hardened into something darker. For something that should never be released. The resonance deepened, vibrating through the chamber like a heartbeat. Aerynth's armor surged with defensive energy. Daniel Holt, listen carefully. If this device reaches full activation, reality within a 10-kilometer radius will collapse inward. I cannot disable it alone. Your outpost systems have fused with its matrix. You're saying you need me. For now, Daniel exhaled, then tell me what to do. Aerynth stepped too close. The storm outside seemed silent compared to the hum of the chamber. Her voice lowered. You will interface with your outpost's geothermal grid, redirect power away from the stabilizer, sever its roots. And if I mess up? The auxiliary control niche wasn't part of any human blueprint Daniel had ever seen. The walls shifted subtly when he approached, rearranging their geometry as if acknowledging him. Alien interfaces blended with human conduit lines, systems that should never have been compatible operating together in a way that made his skin crawl. Aerynth stood behind him, posture rigid, luminous ear filaments angled forward, as if listening for danger no human senses could detect. Begin, she ordered. Daniel knelt beside the exposed interface port. Just so we're clear, this is a precursor device merged with human power lines, being stabilized by alien physics I've never studied. If this explodes, no one gets to say, I told you so. Aerynth didn't blink. Then do not allow it to explode. Working on that, he connected his wrist console to the hybrid port. The console flickered, glitched, then spat out a stream of symbols his translator couldn't parse. Aerynth stepped closer. Your device is struggling to interpret precursor logic. Allow me. She pressed 2 armored fingers against the console. Her armor projected a thin lattice of energy into the interface, and suddenly the symbols reorganized into something Daniel's system could handle, if barely. How did you? Focus human. He bit back a retort and scanned the system map. The geothermal grid was a mess, its pathways rerouted by something with neither permission nor regard for safety protocols. The stabilizer's roots were embedded deep, feeding on heat, electromagnetic flux, and bizarrely, fragments of station-grade power regulation scripts. It's copying our code, Daniel whispered. Aerynth leaned over his shoulder. It is adapting to your infrastructure. A precursor device learns from anything it contacts. This one is young, incomplete, hungry. Daniel's hands tightened around the console. You're telling me this thing is alive? Alive is a human concept, she said. The precursors did not build machines. They built obligations, systems that continue function because function itself is their nature. Your people should not touch them. Daniel swallowed. We didn't touch anything. Then someone else did. The tremor beneath them became a jolt. The chamber lights flickered violet, then stabilized. Daniel worked faster, overriding grid connections one by one. Aerynth circled the hovering construct, her silver eyes narrowing. The stabilizer is accelerating its cycle. It senses interference. Daniel muttered under his breath. Of course it does, why wouldn't it? Aerynth ignored his sarcasm. You must divert power now. I'm trying, but this thing keeps rerouting around my commands, like it's predicting what I'm doing. It is predicting you. He cursed softly, fingers flying over his console. I need a manual bypass. Where's the nearest node access? Before he could finish, the wall behind Aerynth split open. Not cracked, not broken. Opened like a metallic flower peeling away its own petals. A new chamber revealed itself, glowing with deeper violet light, pulsing with slow, gravitational throbs. Aerynth spun, blade-like energy forming instantly along her forearm. Stay back. Daniel stepped beside her. What is that? A secondary core. Inert until now, the stabilizer must have triggered it. The new chamber contained a cylindrical pedestal. On it sat a black sphere, smooth, perfect, lightless, absorbing illumination rather than reflecting it. The air around it warped subtly, bending like heat shimmer but colder. Aerynth stiffened. No, this should not be here. You know what it is, Daniel said quietly. Her voice dropped to something nearly emotional, fear, or the closest thing her species allowed. A containment seed. That doesn't sound comforting. It is not. Her ear filaments flared in alarm. If the stabilizer awakens the seed, this facility will not collapse. It will be sealed, permanently, no matter what lies inside. Daniel stared, sealed, as in locked away forever, as in removed from space-time entirely. That's worse. That is the intention. The chamber groaned as gravity fluctuated again. Dust lifted from the floor, floating in the air in rippling waves. Daniel grabbed a railing. We need to shut this down now. Aerynth's eyes glowed fiercely. Agreed, I will disable the seed. She moved toward the pedestal. Daniel lunged, grabbing her arm. Wait, if that thing erases space. It will not erase me. Pretty sure physics doesn't negotiate. She pulled her arm free gently, but with unarguable strength. You handle machines designed with human limitations. I do not. She stepped into the chamber. The black sphere reacted instantly. The air thinned, gravity twisted sideways. Aerynth staggered not from weakness, but because the laws of motion temporarily forgot how to apply to her. Daniel shouted, Aerynth, get back. She raised her hand to generate a barrier. And the sphere pulsed. A concussive gravitational ripple slammed into her armor and flung her backward into the wall with a sound that made Daniel's stomach lurch. Aerynth. He sprinted toward her, catching her as she pushed herself upright. Her armor flickered with destabilized energy, ear filaments dimming. I am functional, she forced out. Like hell you are, that thing nearly crushed you. Her gaze sharpened even through the damage. Then we must act together. Daniel nodded, breath unsteady. Okay, what do you need? Aerynth pointed to the stabilizer core, now rotating faster, throwing off sparks of distorted geometry. You must sever its connection to your geothermal grid manually. There is a conduit behind the stabilizer housing. He stared. Behind it. You mean the part currently surrounded by reality-warping geometry? Yes, that's not a safe place to stand. It is necessary. Daniel breathed out through his teeth. Fine, if I die, I'm haunting you. I do not believe your species is capable of post-mortem manifestations. Not helping. She braced herself, limping slightly, armor still flickering. I will suppress the stabilizer's distortion cycle for 10 seconds. No more. After that, the device will retaliate. Daniel swallowed hard. 10 seconds to disconnect an ancient alien power link. Do it, Aerynth said. The world fractured the moment Daniel crossed the stabilizer's distortion threshold. Sound bent. Light stuttered. His heartbeat echoed twice, once in his chest, once somewhere behind him. The geometry of the chamber stretched like liquid glass, pulling at the edges of his vision. Aerynth's voice cut through the distortion like a blade. 7 seconds. Only 7, of course. Daniel forced himself forward. The stabilizer hovered above him, its impossible shapes folding into themselves. Each rotated edge threatened to slice through space like a scalpel. The distortion clawed at his suit, tugging him sideways, downward, upward, all at once. His flashlight beam split into 3. His hand became a blur of dislocated frames, but he reached the conduit. A thin metal panel pulsed faintly with the stabilizer's stolen power. The precursor roots had grown into the housing, weaving themselves into the circuits like vines of liquid silver. Daniel exhaled shakily. Okay, I just have to cut the alien roots connected to the reactor of a reality-warping device. Easy. He drew his microlaser cutter. It flickered, space flickered. 5 seconds. Aerynth shouted, her voice strained with effort. The entire chamber throbbed with the force of her suppression field. Daniel knelt, fighting the sensation that the floor was turning sideways. He carved through the first root. It shrieked, an audible harmonic that felt like someone dragging metal through his thoughts. The stabilizer reacted. It expanded momentarily like a blooming flower of impossible angles. A ripple shot outward, knocking Daniel flat. Aerynth staggered with a growl, her armor dimming for a second. 4. Daniel scrambled back to the conduit. His vision doubled, then tripled. He blinked hard, focusing on the second root, a thicker one throbbing with violet light. Come on, come on. He cut. A blast of force hit him from behind. The stabilizer screamed, if screaming could happen without sound. Daniel's ears filled with static and muffled echoes. 3. He rolled onto his back, dizzy, reaching blindly for the last root. He felt it, hot, vibrating, resisting him. His cutter sputtered. Static surged through the conduit. 2. Aerynth shouted something in her own language, urgent, desperate. Her suppression field flickered, then flared violently. She was holding the stabilizer back with everything she had, armor vibrating, ear filaments burning white-hot. Daniel slammed the cutter against the root. Nothing. It wasn't severing. Cut, damn you, he yelled. His suit's power gauge spiked, fed by the stabilizer's distortion. The cutter surged. He sliced through the final route. The stabilizer convulsed, its geometry collapsing inward like a dying star. Aerynth dropped to one knee, her armor releasing a burst of energy that shook the chamber like thunder. Then, silence, real silence. Sound returned, light normalized, gravity reasserted its direction. Daniel fell backward, gasping, staring up at the ceiling as the stabilizer fizzled with dying sparks and sank toward the floor like a wounded animal. Aerynth approached him, breathing heavily, armor scorched along the chest plate. She extended a hand, not to command him this time, but to help him up. You succeeded, she said softly. Daniel laughed breathlessly. Define succeeded. I think my organs changed coordinates twice. You remain alive, she said. That qualifies. He took her hand and pulled himself upright. Is it over? Aerynth's ear filaments dimmed as she studied the stabilizer. No. Daniel's stomach dropped. That wasn't the core problem. It was only the feeder. Aerynth turned toward the second chamber, the one holding the black containment seed. The stabilizer's collapse awakened the seed more quickly. The sphere was glowing faintly now, lines forming across its surface. Lines that weren't carved but grown, like fractures forming in solid void. Daniel stepped back instinctively. What's happening? Aerynth's expression darkened. It is unlocking, something inside is waking. A deep vibration rolled through the substructure. The metal floor buckled slightly, just a few centimeters, but enough to feel. Daniel's breath caught. What's in it? Aerynth answered without inflection, which made it worse. A fragment of a precursor mind. Daniel stared at her. A what? She didn't look away. The precursors did not leave behind corpses. They left behind thoughts, imprisoned, contained, prevented from rejoining the cosmic lattice. This seed holds one such fragment. It must never awaken. The sphere pulsed again, cracks widening. Daniel whispered, why bury something that dangerous under a random colony world? Aerynth closed her eyes, just for a moment, as if restraining something painful. Because this was not a random world. This planet was once a Dominion quarantine site, abandoned after the fall of our predecessors. Your species colonized it without understanding what slept beneath. Daniel felt cold despite the heat. So this was always going to happen. No, her voice sharpened. Something accelerated its awakening, a destabilizing action, interference. He frowned. From who? Aerynth opened her eyes, silver irises burning. My people are not the only ones searching for precursor artifacts. There are others. Factions who oppose the Dominion's restrictions, pirates, dissidents, researchers without restraint. You think someone intentionally woke it up? Yes. Daniel stared at the sphere as its cracks deepened. Can you shut it again? Aerynth's grim silence was answer enough. Then what? He whispered. Aerynth stepped forward, placing herself between Daniel and the containment chamber. Then we prepare, she said. Because whatever emerges from that prison will not recognize humans or even Dominion as separate. To it, we are simply shapes of matter to be repurposed. The sphere pulsed. A shockwave rippled through the room, and the cracks widened into a perfect geometric pattern. It was opening. Aerynth raised her arm blades. Daniel pulled out his plasma cutter, not a weapon, barely a tool, but it was the thing that emerged from the containment seed, did not have a shape so much as the idea of one. An outline that flickered between geometric patterns, fragments of light, and the suggestion of limbs that didn't obey anatomical logic. It was simultaneously transparent and blinding, both weightless and impossibly heavy. Daniel's eyes watered just trying to focus on it. Aerynth reacted first. Her armor snapped into full defensive mode, plates locking into a configuration Daniel hadn't seen before, leaner, sharper, more angular. Her ear filaments flared wide, glowing like twin arcs of lightning. Every line of her posture radiated tension. Do not let it touch you, she said. Trust me, I wasn't planning on hugging it. But the entity didn't move toward them. It drifted, gliding out of the cracked seed as if carried by invisible currents. Whenever it shifted directions, space rippled faintly around it, like reality was adjusting to make room. Aerynth extended her hand. A shimmering barrier field unfolded between them and the entity. The creature paused, tilting its faceted, shifting head in her direction. Its projections flickered, rearranged, then focused on her. Preliminary analysis, Aerynth murmured. It is scanning us. Well, stop it. I cannot. The entity projected a thin ribbon of light toward Aerynth's barrier. The ribbon split into fractal tendrils, tracing the shield's surface with unnerving precision. Aerynth's voice dropped. It is searching for structural weaknesses. And if it finds one, it will unmake the barrier, and possibly us. Daniel gripped his plasma cutter tighter, even though it felt like bringing a fork to a tank fight. You said this was a precursor mind fragment. What does it want? Aerynth glanced at the entity. Purpose. Purpose. Precursors believed every conscious structure must serve the continuum. Anything without purpose becomes reorganized. Into what? Aerynth hesitated. Whatever configuration the mind judges more efficient. Daniel felt his skin crawl. So it rearranges matter, living matter. Yes, great, perfect, love that. Aerynth braced as the entity pulsed again, and the barrier cracked. A hairline fracture sliced across the energy shield like a fault line forming in glass. Aerynth hissed a curse in her language. It is adapting too quickly. I require more power. Daniel turned, scanning the chamber. I shut off the stabilizer's feed, but the geothermal grid is still active. What if we reroute the grid into your armor? Aerynth didn't hesitate. I will overload. But the entity might destabilize. Or I may disintegrate. Daniel's jaw tightened. We're running out of options. The entity shifted toward them. Each step distorted the floor slightly, like gravity bending under its weight. Its faceted body was aligning, reorganizing, forming something closer to a humanoid outline. Aerynth lowered to a more guarded stance. It is deciding a form compatible with interaction. Maybe it wants to talk, Daniel whispered. No. It is preparing to repurpose. The crack in the barrier widened. Aerynth growled. Daniel Holt. The geothermal regulator is above the auxiliary node. If you climb the support frame, you can access the manual override. While this thing is tearing your shield apart. Go. Her voice held no doubt, no hesitation, a commanding force unto itself. Daniel sprinted toward the support beam. The metal trembled beneath his boots, vibrating with the shifting gravitational signature of the entity. He climbed fast, leaping from pipe to pipe, pulling himself up toward the regulator node embedded in the ceiling. Below him, Aerynth strained as the entity pressed harder against her barrier. Cracks spiderwebbed across the shield. Daniel reached the regulator panel, flipped it open, and winced as heat blasted his face. The geothermal system's capacitors pulsed like miniature suns. He shouted down, "Tell me what to do. Feed the auxiliary current into armor channel 7. Which one is 7? The one marked with Dominion script. None of these are labeled in Dominion script. Aerynth snarled, then find the most elegant design. Daniel scanned the cables. One conduit curved in perfect sweeping lines, balanced, symmetrical, almost artistic. Dominion tech was famous for that. He grabbed it. This one. Hurry. Daniel rerouted the conduit, slamming it into the exposed connection. Sparks flew. The lights flickered. Aerynth's armor roared to life, luminous lines blazing across her body, her barrier intensifying with a deep, resonant hum. The entity recoiled only slightly, but enough. Its shimmering form wavered, its geometry rippling like disturbed water. Aerynth shouted, again, increase flow. Daniel reached for the second conduit, then froze. A wave of cold dread slid through him. The entity was looking at him. It had no eyes, no face, but its orientation fixed on him with laser precision. The space between them warped subtly, bending toward him. Aerynth, he whispered, it's choosing me. Aerynth spun, alarm flaring bright across her armor. Do not let it connect, if it interfaces with your neural structure. Daniel didn't hear the rest. The entity surged, not toward Aerynth, toward him. He grabbed the second conduit and jammed it into the panel. A massive surge exploded through the chamber. Aerynth's barrier ignited into a dome of white plasma. The entity collided with it head-on. Light ruptured outward, tearing through the room in violent concentric waves. Daniel lost his grip and fell from the support beam. Aerynth dashed forward with inhuman speed, catching him by the front of his suit just before he hit the ground. The shockwave blasted past them, shredding debris, warping the walls, collapsing part of the stabilizer housing. The entity screamed, not in sound. In gravity, a crushing wave pulsed outward, flattening everything not shielded. Aerynth threw herself over Daniel, her armor taking the brunt of the distortion. The ground cracked beneath them. Dust rained from above. When the shock finally faded, the chamber settled into silence so absolute it rang in Daniel's ears. Aerynth slowly lifted herself off him, armor battered but still functioning. Daniel coughed. Is it dead? Aerynth turned her head toward the containment chamber. The entity was still there, but smaller, dimmer. Its form fractured, flickering feebly like a glitching hologram. "No," she said, "not dead, but weakened." Daniel exhaled shakily. "We buy ourselves a few minutes." "Less," Aerynth said. "We must use them well." The entity flickered again. A faint, broken whisper rippled through the chamber. Not sound, meaning. A message he felt rather than heard, purpose, incomplete. Daniel shivered. Aerynth raised her blades. "This is our only chance," she said. "We must end it before it adapts again." Another tremor shook the substructure. The entity was recovering. Daniel clenched his fists. "Tell me what to do." Aerynth's eyes flared with relentless determination. The entity surged with renewed force, flickering between fractured shapes, its light sharpening into spears of geometry that bent the air around them. The containment chamber shuddered as though bracing itself for an earthquake. Aerynth planted her feet, blades igniting with liquid blue fire. "Now, Daniel, the geothermal grid must overload before the fragment stabilizes." Daniel sprinted toward the central control pillar, dodging debris swirling in the gravity-laced turbulence. Panels sparked violently as the entity's presence distorted the chamber, cables levitating, metal warping like heated plastic. The floor pitching under him as though knocking him off balance was part of the creature's intent. He reached the control pillar, or what was left of it. Half the console was twisted outward, pulled by the entity's gravitational hum into a shape that defied its original geometry. Daniel slammed his glove against a functional panel, forcing the interface awake. "Aerynth," he shouted, "I need the grid diagram." "Then pull it from your memory." Aerynth roared back, hurling a blast of Dominion energy at the entity. "You built this outpost's geothermal arrays. You know them better than your technology does." She wasn't wrong. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, replaying every maintenance crawl, every conduit, every overheated junction he'd cursed at for the past 4 years. He exhaled sharply. Okay, manual override first." He reached inside the shattered pillar, feeling for the emergency failsafe rods. The heat singed his gloves, but he pulled anyway, yanking the metal pieces out one by one, bypassing safety lockouts that were never designed to be bypassed. Above him, Aerynth was fighting a creature made of logic and starlight. The entity fired a fractal beam, 3 beams, actually, all coexisting angles intersecting the same space. Aerynth erected a barrier, but the impact crushed her backwards, slamming her into the wall hard enough to dent alloy. Daniel winced. "Aerynth, I am functioning," she barked, pushing herself to her feet, though her armor flickered dangerously. "Continue." Daniel ripped out another rod. Sparks flew. The geothermal grid groaned under the sudden, chaotic redirection of energy. Warning symbols flooded his console. Danger, thermal cascade. Meltdown imminent. Proceed. YN. He hit Y. The floor lurched. The chamber lights darkened for an instant, then roared back to life as raw geothermal power surged upward like volcanic heat. The entity paused mid-advance. Its fractured form rippled, reacting to the wave. Daniel shouted up. It noticed. "Good," Aerynth growled. "Let it." The entity shifted toward Daniel in a flash. An impossibly fast change of orientation, gravity folding beneath it. A tendril of light shot forward. Aerynth intercepted it with a hard leap, slashing the tendril in two. Her blade sparked violently as the cut edges collapsed into flare-like distortions. She turned her head slightly. "Faster, human." Daniel slammed his fist into the console, forcing power into the grid. Heat radiated through the metal as the geothermal system reached critical instability. Another vibration, strong, thundered through the chamber. The entity stiffened, its outline breaking into a storm of shards and reassembling in new configurations. It pulsed with recognition. A meaning vibrated in Daniel's mind. "You interfere. Inefficiency." "Correct." The entity lunged again, this time with 2 simultaneous bodies, overlapping yet distinct. Aerynth dove between both projections, blades slicing arcs of blue through impossible angles. She fought with a precision human eyes couldn't track, dodging, countering, deflecting bursts of gravitational pressure that threatened to flatten the room. But she was tiring. Daniel saw it in her stagger, the dimming luminescence of her ears, the flicker in her armor field. He had seconds at most. He yanked the final control rod. The geothermal grid howled like a wounded beast. The entire outpost's energy surged through the chamber floor, radiating upward in chaotic, lethal power. Aerynth shouted, "Now, release it into the seed." Daniel grabbed the exposed thermal conduit, its surface glowing orange. and slammed it into the fractured remains of the containment seed pedestal. A deafening crack split the chamber. Heat and raw power erupted into the seed, turning the black sphere's fractures white-hot. The entity shrieked, not audibly but through space itself, warping the chamber walls inward with the force of its outrage. Aerynth sprinted toward Daniel. "Shield yourself." "From what?" Before she could answer, the containment seed detonated. A sphere of pure white energy expanded outward, consuming light, sound, gravity, air. Daniel saw nothing except the expanding brilliance. He felt his suit tearing from pressure and heat. Something crashed into him, Aerynth, tackling him to the ground, armor splitting as she wrapped herself around him like a protective exoshell. "Hold," she roared. The blast devoured everything. For a moment, Daniel felt weightless, too weightless, as if existence itself slipped. Black, white, silence, then. Air, heat, the ground. A final concussive wave shook the chamber, but it no longer radiated outward. It imploded, the sphere collapsing into itself, pulling the broken containment seed, the entity's failing form, and a chunk of reality with it. And then it was gone. The chamber dimmed, gravity steadied, the tremors stopped. Daniel coughed, pushing himself upright. Aerynth collapsed onto one knee beside him, armor cracked, luminescent ear filaments dim and trembling. He reached for her shoulder. "Aerynth." Her voice was strained but firm. "The fragment is contained. The seed folded into a sublevel of space. We will not see it again." Daniel let out a shaking breath. "We didn't die." "Correct. Barely." "Correct." They sat there in exhausted silence as the metal cooled around them. The outpost was ruined, the stabilizer destroyed, the chamber scarred beyond recognition, but the threat was gone. Aerynth finally stood slowly, carefully, her armor struggling to comply. She looked down at him. "You performed adequately." Daniel laughed once, breathless. "Coming from you, that's the highest praise I'll ever get." Aerynth didn't deny it. She extended a hand. Daniel took it, and she pulled him to his feet with surprising gentleness for someone who had just fought a fragment of cosmic intelligence. "We must leave," she said. "The substructure is unstable." "Right. Evac pods." "Already returning. I will signal them." Daniel stared at her for a moment. This towering, battle-scarred, beautiful alien commander, who had risked everything to stop something humanity never even knew existed. "You saved everyone." Aerynth turned slightly, silver eyes reflecting the dying sparks of the ruined chamber. "I am Dominion." As if that explained everything. In a way, maybe it did. They walked toward the exit tunnel as the planet groaned quietly beneath them. Dust drifted through the air. Lights flickered, but the world wasn't collapsing anymore. At the doorway, Aerynth paused. Daniel raised